Hello, my name's Imagine, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 95, and I'll be talking to Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, who has been a story lover since she and her family watched TV and movies together. Her father taught her how to find the deeper layers of a story. This love prompted her to pursue a double major, bachelor's in religious studies and theatre and speech, and a master's in theatre arts. And finally, a master's in education so she could share her love for stories with students. She grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but has lived in Southern Arizona for over 24 years, moving there after a 3-month trip circumnavigating the globe. Now completely retired, Lucinda writes her weekly blog, Sage Woman Chronicles, is working on her second book, and produces a bi-weekly podcast, Story Power. Hello and welcome to Lucinda. How are you, Lucinda?
I am fine. How are you, Niranjan?
I am very well. Yes.
Is that how you say it?
You did. You got it right. Thank you.
Okay.
You did. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm curious and excited to have a deeper conversation about your background in terms of your theater and your education and the drama, and your real passion and desire to really delve into the English language and how that influences your storytelling mechanisms, I guess, your programs and courses of what you teach. So,
okay.
What is it you believe about yourself, and do you feel it defines who you are?
Ooh, that is a deep question because that's the answer is now changing. I believe that I am, okay, spoiler alert, or some people might not like this answer. I believe that I am an aspect of God, just like everybody else is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been working on clearing out all of that bad, dark stuff that attaches to us or that we think that we have to let be part of our lives. And so for the last few years, I've been clearing out some of that stuff. And just recently, I have turned my attention to clearing out the old thoughts especially about money and how artists aren't supposed to earn money. We're supposed to be starving,
Yes.
And so, I just retired from teaching at the college. I was supposed to teach a class that I love called dramatic structure. But nobody signed up for it. And so I have been taking classes through Mind Valley. And I just signed up for my 5th one, but the 4th one was about how to create online courses. And so I said, well, I'm going to take that dramatic structure class, which is all about how the playwright, screenwriter, author, because some of them are based on books, movies are based on books, and take how they structure their story to get the theme across. And I believe that authors, anybody who's really creative, and they can be creative in like cooking or gardening or something like that too. But anyone who's creative is connecting with some well of divinity. And so I am creating this course. I called it Saving the World One Story at a Time, because I don't know, while I was thinking about creating it, it came to me that Stories help us understand ourselves and human nature and other people. And
Mm-hmm.
then if we really pay attention, we can develop our empathy and our compassion, even our communication skills and our emotional intelligence. Excuse me. And so to me, those storytelling, it's one of the oldest teaching tools, even before
Mm-hmm.
written language. And so I think that's why people are so attracted to all forms of storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
is because we're used to learning from them. Now, who I am, who I am is changing. So I'm not quite sure how to answer that right now.
It's a beautiful one. And I love how the expansion of the online courses and the language of not only the English language, but the language of thought, creation, and creativity is expressed through storytelling. And now you're guiding individuals on that journey.
Mhm.
So, do you feel that most of your life has been reflected back to you in snippets of stories?
Yes. Yes, one of the things that I realized was that my favorite stories have to do with people, and a lot of stories are like this. People who are plopped down into situations and then they have to navigate the new situation, and sometimes it's really dangerous. Mine wasn't that way. We moved a lot, so I was every couple of years I was, the new kid at the school.
Mm, right,
And
right.
what I learned to do was just sit back and observe. How do
Mm,
things work at this school and where can I
yeah.
fit in? And sometimes it was really a great experience and sometimes it wasn't. There was one school that was difficult. But uh, so I like those kinds of stories. I like stories with unusual love relationships, which I don't have one of those. I've been married for 42 years. Uh,
Yes.
and so, but where people they love each other, but maybe they're not going to end up together in terms of being married or something, but the love still just helps them thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I love those kinds of stories. And I'm always looking for or stories where people are going through some really difficult times and they are actively trying to learn something from them.
Yes.
I just I'm not really a big romance because when I was a teenager, my mom fed me romance novels to try and get me interested in reading. And after about the 10th one, I went, these are all the same. I don't really like them. But the other couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I watched Marry Me with Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson. And it was like, oh, this is a really great story
Yes.
because his theme is if you have a problem, sit in it until you get an answer, which was like, oh, wow, that's really spiritual. And hers was if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's not working. That's really stupid. You got to pick a new something to do
That's right.
to
That's right.
break out. And it was like, oh yeah, well, that's sort of the flip of what Albert Einstein said, you got to
Mm-hmm.
pick,
Mm-hmm.
you got to do something new to make your life better. And
Yes.
I loved those themes. It's just this kind of light, fun, feel good movie, but it had these great, deep
Mm-hmm.
themes to it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of stories like that,
Yeah.
that you don't really, on the surface, it looks like they're just going to be frivolous.
Right.
And then they have these really great themes. Then there are others like Cloud Atlas, which is not frivolous and has six timelines and is really
Yes.
difficult to understand unless you've read the book. Um, and it has a lot of really deep themes, but
Yes.
it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to understand. So I like those
Mm-hmm.
too.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how it's really about the one who's witnessing it
Mm-hmm.
is gonna absorb or
Mm-hmm.
allow that content to come through. So the Marry Me movie that you talked about, depending on the awareness of the individual watching it, is what they will receive. And for the Cloud Atlas too, I mean, isn't that part of life, of how we run through relationships, how we run through life and experiences? Is the lens that we wear is going to dictate to our version of the story.
Really. And one of the things that I always pointed out to my students was, this isn't math. There's not one right answer. So you're going to get something out of the story that I might not see, but let's have a conversation so that, because sometimes my students would say, oh, this is what I got out of the story. And I would go, oh, wow, I never thought of that before. That's really great. So I love having, well, when I was growing up, we had lots of conversations about movies. My dad was really great about asking deep questions about the movies or the television. So yeah, having the conversations and being open-minded and not judgmental and being curious about what somebody else thinks, sometimes you learn a lot.
You do, absolutely. So with that, what do you believe is your calling, or one of the many callings that you have today?
I think that one of my callings is to help people realize that part of the reason why we are not emotionally intelligent or have empathy or something is because we don't love ourselves. It's really difficult to have compassion or empathy for someone else if you have built up this armor around yourself, and because you think that the universe is not a friendly place, and you think you have to protect yourself. So I used to be there, so I understand that. I understand the feeling of feeling threatened, and it was probably because I'm a highly sensitive person, and we moved a lot, and that was difficult. But yeah, learning to love yourself, that's one of them. The other one is that well, I just said it. The world is a friendly place. There's plenty of everything to go around. Why we think there isn't is kind of baffling to me, but that's a millennia upon millennia point of view. So it's going to take us a while to break that thought pattern. And yeah, and I just do it through stories. When I talk to my podcast guests on Story Power, I want to know their stories, but I also want to know what, because most of them are creators of some sort.
Yes.
And why do they create what they create, and talk about, the themes in their lives. And because I always learn something from them.
What do you feel are some of the attributes that connect you with your purpose?
Attributes. Well, I was taught to be open-minded. My father was very smart about human nature. And so I learned to watch body language and facial expressions and listen to tone of voice so that I could get clues about what the person that I was communicating with was talking about, or what they were trying to tell me, even though sometimes their words and the body language didn't match. Sometimes you can get clues about what they're really thinking, what they're really feeling, instead of what they think they're trying to tell you, because we hide things, we tell ourselves stories and we hide things from ourselves. And then another thing is I sound like I'm bragging, but I've had students who say, you are the most patient person I have ever met in my whole entire life. And it's like, well, okay, I just let people, if they're going to act out in some way, unless it's going to damage somebody else or hurt somebody else, I just let them do it. It's like, okay, you need to get that, whatever it is, out.
Right.
And there were times when I was teaching high school that I did have to take a couple of guys out and say, look, I'm going to kick you out of the class if you don't stop picking on this kid. I had to do that sometimes. And since they were football players, and if they got kicked out, they wouldn't be able to play football the next year.
Right. Yes.
They paid attention. But most of the time, yeah, I would have students say, "Okay, it's Friday. Don't you want to let us out early?" And I would just laugh at them and say, "Oh, Friday's a work day, so no." And then I would laugh.
Okay.
I would laugh again, and then they would just go, "Oh dear, okay."
Yes.
um,
Yes.
I guess I'm kind of easygoing in a way. Don't get bent out of shape when somebody else is getting bent out of shape.
Yeah. And I would imagine a lot of creativity and a lot of out of the box thinking and really stretching your creativity in roles and idealisms and storylines and experiences really out of the box thinking that will allow you to put these beautiful stories together.
Yes, I do try to do that. Yeah. I'm I am not really somebody who likes to follow the rules. I have to say that, even though I do follow like the traffic rules and things like that. But uh when I was a religious studies major, it was the 70s, and I was the only woman in the program. And women, for the most part, in most religions, were not being ordained as ministers, and they weren't in the religion that I grew up in either. And so there were people who said, "You need to change your major." I was like,
Hmm.
"You don't know why I'm taking these classes. It has nothing to do with me wanting to be a minister." It has to do with the stories. But, I couldn't really articulate it then.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of I'm a rule breaker, but I do it sort of quietly.
Right. Quietly, but yet perhaps forcefully.
Maybe, yes. Yes. Anyway, yeah. I don't understand the whole, why do we have to have I've been thinking about this lately. Why do we have to have lawmakers? What can't we get to the place where everybody just treats everyone nicely and we don't need all these laws upon laws upon laws? Of course, we'll need traffic, you know, lights and things like that for safety purposes, but yeah, it's all these trying to control other people. I just don't get that.
Yeah, I don't get it either, but I hear and see and witness the rebellion part of you of challenging that and really monitoring, going, how is this really playing out in our physical life? Granted, yes, anything and everything to a certain degree in a book or on a movie is fictitious. It's a story,
Mm-hmm.
it's made up.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yet, it does beg the question, where do those storylines truly come from?
Right. Well, and a lot of times I've talked to lots of authors, they will be so surprised at what people find in their story, some theme that they didn't even realize they had put in there. And I have a book, and I know that as I'm writing it, it changed, it morphed from the first original idea that I had for it. And so I sometimes, when you're just going into that well of creativity, things come out that you're not really expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm sure that people who write music, in fact, I'm going to go back to Marry Me. Jennifer Lopez has this tune in her head, and she just keeps playing it, but no words have come. And uh, Owen Wilson's daughter, she's married Owen Wilson, although they don't live together. Uh, uh, and Owen Wilson's daughter is listening to it, and she says, "That's really beautiful." And she said, "Yeah, but I don't have any words for it yet." And that's when his daughter says, "Well, my dad says, sit in the problem until you get the answer." Well, eventually she does. The relationship that is growing between her and Owen Wilson's character, she gets inspired and she writes this beautiful song. And it's all about him, but she doesn't even realize it's about him at first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we do that. We hide things from ourselves. We tell ourselves stories that aren't true. you know, I guess that's what I've been trying to dig up, is all these stories I've told myself for years and years and years that aren't really true.
Why do you think we have those stories? Why do you think we create them?
protection, I think, is one thing. If someone betrays you, someone that you just trusted and loved, well, it can't be. At first, we think, well, it can't be about something that I did. And so you tell this whole story about what an ogre that person is or whatever. And then, really later, once you're starting to heal, if you're examining it, then you have to take responsibility for your part in whatever happened. Now, sometimes people are sociopathic and they just like to hurt people. And so, then it's not your fault. But a relationship is two people.
Yes.
And so when I first realized, oh, I have to take responsibility for my life and some of the things that I did and things that happened to me. And one of them was the harassment of the guys that, were trying to tell me that Bible thumpers, that I needed to stop and change my major from religious studies. And years later, I read the first line in The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck just hit me like a ton of bricks. It is, life is difficult. And I went, life is difficult. And I thought it was supposed to be easy. Everybody says it's supposed to be easy. It looks like everybody else's life is easy. But no, everyone's life is difficult. Everyone's life is. And then I started to realize that I had been holding on to this rage for years, and it was detrimental. And that for some reason, I had participated in that whole situation so that I could learn something. It wasn't, I don't think I deserved to be harassed, but I was trying to teach myself something, I guess.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when situations happen to us that are really horrible, oh, well, maybe it's, we're supposed to learn something from that.
I would beg to say that we are to learn something. There is no maybe, there is no question. It showed up for a reason, for us to walk through it. Doesn't mean we need to sit in it, but it's to walk through it and learn and look back and go, okay, that's what happened. So we don't do the U-turn
right
again.
Well, and if we don't walk through it, as you said, because I held on to that rage for a long time, and then I realized, oh, you know what? I need to actually feel the rage, because if I don't, it won't go away.
Yes.
It'll just build and build and build. And I always say it comes back in a scarier package if you don't deal with it,
Yeah.
If you don't deal with your emotions, especially your bad emotions, the joy emotions. Sometimes joy emotions are scary too, because we're not used to feeling joy or ecstasy or
that's right.
And it's like, wait a minute, why am I feeling so happy? Something must be wrong. And it's the other shoe, waiting for the other shoe to drop, which there's no other shoe. I'm sorry, there's no other shoe.
There's only another shoe if you create the other shoe.
Right, yeah.
Because we can do that. We're powerful beings. We can do all of that.
Right, yes, right. Exactly.
What is your intentions with the storytelling of writing your books and being in the space of guiding others on their journey? What is your intentions with this craft of storytelling?
Well, the books and my blog are both about figuring out what I think about the world, or how I feel about it, and how I feel about my life, and it's self-examination, sort of. The podcast is trying to connect with other people and find out how creativity affects them and what they're trying to share with the world. And then the class is, when I had this realization that, it was sort of like, I'm always thinking in the back of my head. I always have this stuff going on in the back of my head. And so one day it hit me, if everyone had been emotionally intelligent from the very beginning of humanity, we would not have had all the atrocities and the wars and the, power plays and all that stuff. And so I thought, oh man, I wish we had. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. That's right. We have to learn from our mistakes.
Yes.
So now that emotional intelligence is becoming more and more a thing with therapists and psychologists, it's I just wanted to help. I want to help advance that.
Mm-hmm.
I want us to use stories or whatever tool, because there are lots of tools that you can use to become emotionally intelligent. But I would just want to foster that so that humanity can grow up. It's sort of like we're in the teenage, lots of hormones stage
Yes.
as human beings. And I used to work with teenagers, so I know what that's like.
Yeah.
I used to be a teenager too at
Mm-hmm.
one point in my life. So, but it kind of feels like maybe we're starting to come out of that now and go, oh, wait a minute. We have to tell the truth to ourselves. It's difficult,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the United States. I mean, we have some things that went on in the United States that were like so atrocious, atrocities. And we can't just point our finger at other countries and go, look at the atrocities in that country,
Yes,
because they happened in ours too.
that's right.
And so we have to be honest with ourselves about those and then move on and then try to build the
Yeah,
bridge
yeah.
and move on.
It's hard, or is it?
I don't think it's hard, but I mean, my husband and I watched, Ken Burns has a new documentary out called The US and the Holocaust. And when we finished, my husband just went, whoa, I can see why he thinks this is the very best of all of his documentaries, because it shows that a lot of a lot of people in the United States did not even want to know. I mean, the evidence was there of what Hitler was doing, his cronies were doing to the Jews, but it's like, oh well, we don't want to know. We don't want to acknowledge that. We don't want to look at that. And we don't want to let a lot of Jews into the country because they will take our jobs. And I mean, it's the same story as now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, those people are going to take our jobs. And I mean, that's the story it's always been in our country. Oh, we don't want immigrants in here because they'll take our jobs. Well, we can create more jobs, there's no
Plenty to go around. 8 billion people on the planet.
right. Yes. So, but it was devastating, but it was really important to watch that, to see that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I have to watch those devastating things. It's hard to watch them, but then it's good too. Yeah.
Because it gives us a perspective. It gives us a
Mhm.
different element of not only the historical story of whatever happened at that timeline, but you can see the patterns of it reoccurring
Oh, yes.
to current day. But
Yes.
just with a different label, just with different
Mhm.
characters, back to your
Mhm.
storyline piece. But the
Mhm.
fundamental part of the story is exactly the same.
So history really does repeat itself.
It does.
Just looks like it's in a different package,
That's right.
but it's not. Yeah.
It's not. It's just like
Yeah.
those life lessons that we have.
Mhm.
So what's next for Lucinda? What's next
Oh,
for you? You're creating this course, you've retired. What else is happening in your
yeah.
world?
I say I've retired, but I'm not really retired. I'm more busy than I was when I was when I was
Always the case.
well, of course, when I was teaching public school, I was very busy all the time. So, but this one, when I finish this course, I'm going to go back and pay attention to my Patreon community because I've sort of neglected them.
No.
And yes, I know. Well, I was gone almost all of July for the vacation with my mom for my mom's 90th birthday. And just visiting family. We had a family reunion too. So
Mhm.
And then in August, I was getting ready to teach that class that didn't go at the college. And so then I've formally retired. I have no idea what will come from creating this course. I mean, I'm sort of in the middle of editing the videos. I have all of the, outlines and things ready to upload to
Yes.
Udemy, and I have parts of it finished at Udemy, but I have to finish getting that ready, and then we'll see what happens from there. I'm pretty much a stay at home. I'm home almost all the time. And I have enough podcast recordings that take me through almost a year from now.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
I'm not doing any recording. I have been on a few podcasts, but I'm even stopping that for a little while until I get the course up and running.
Mhm.
And then we'll see what happens from there. I mean, I love doing the podcast. So once I'm closer to the end of all the recordings, I'll probably start doing that again, recording.
Again.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Storytelling is such a magical art. And I feel like it truly is an art. And there is a formula and a very specific intention that goes into building a real beautiful story filled and rich with so much. And it seems like you've really mastered that to a fine art to be able to create the books and the stories and the blogs and the content that you're creating. So congratulations for that.
Well, I'm creating content, but actually that my expertise is in analyzing the stories and looking at what I can learn from them and what other people can learn from them. That's my expertise, is the analyzation. The creating the stories is fun, but it's a slog. A lot of writers say that it's difficult to write. And my second book was stalled for quite a while because I started it before there was anything going on current time, because it has two timelines, for the women's movement. I mean, that one of the women in the past was involved in the suffrage movement, but in 2014 there was nothing going on here. And then of course it all exploded with Bill Cosby and Roger Ailes and Harvey Weinstein. And then but then the pandemic happened and all this other stuff happened. And I'm like, but I finally kind of know now. So that's probably another thing I will do, is go back and try to finish up the rough draft of that second novel, because I've almost everything in the historical timeline is finished almost. It's the current timeline that I was struggling with. So.
And that's unfolding more and more interestingly enough every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't get the whole trying to control other people and their decisions. I never got that. Because my dad was not, I mean, even our parents weren't like that. They would sit us down and, okay, now I remember when I was starting to date. Okay, now let's talk about your dating. What time do you think is a reasonable time for you to get home? After a date. And so we would talk about that, and we made a decision together. It wasn't them trying to control me. So I never got that whole authoritarian thing, because my parents they weren't authoritarian.
Yes. So. But it is so prevalent, and it's actually more prevalent in other countries as well. Western countries, the control mechanism is very visible. And having been doing a little bit of traveling, I see it, and it is pretty interesting, and it's somewhat alarming that the natives of that country don't recognize the magnitude of control that they've just handed over to the authorities,
but that's part of our growth process too, is we have to declare our independence, and we have to realize that I kind of see it as a disintegration of the far right authoritarian, they know, they can feel it. They can feel the change is happening, and it scares the bejeebies out of them. And so they're trying to grasp onto as much control as they can. But eventually, they're not gonna be able to continue,
Right.
because is waking up, and they're gonna go, oh no, wait a minute, no, that's not
Yeah.
what we want.
Yeah.
But we have to go through that.
Yeah.
It's just part of our growth process. That's all.
Absolutely, it is. But we've got to sit in it until we find our own truth. Because often with the narrative that you're talking about and what's going on in the world, it's either a black or a white. Either you're in the left camp or you're in the right camp.
Right.
Rather than going, okay, I'm going to stay neutral and I'm going to find my own camp,
Yeah.
rather than follow others' messaging and separation. Let me find my own. I'll make my own choice.
Yeah, I think it was in some book that I read about Buddha, about the middle way. He was listening to a musician teacher help teaching a lesson about the strings have to be just tight enough. You have to make sure that they're not too tight or too loose. It's the middle, and I was like, oh yeah, might have been Herman Hesse's book. And so that's really what we need to do, is kind of be in the middle. And I think I tried to do that too, even though I really am. I grew up in a really liberal family, but I have to be open and not judgmental of the other people on the other side.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And listen to them and actually be curious about why do you think that way?
That's right.
Okay. I never thought of that before. I always love it when I can say, oh, I never thought of that before. Let me go think about that. Because that's where you learn something.
Absolutely. That's the gift right there, to be open, to have that awareness and be transparent and say, okay, that's your perspective. That's brilliant. I understand it, but I still stand in my own opinion. But yet I can honor you for making the choices of what you make.
Right. Well,
so then reciprocate that.
Exactly. That's an emotionally intelligent person who can say, oh, I honor you, who you are. I don't want to change your mind because I don't know what your life path is.
Yes.
But this is what I think, and maybe we can find common ground somehow, or at least allow each other to have our own opinions. And
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I'm trusting that those who listen to this will perhaps have a little nod to those who they have maybe a strong opinion towards for some of the decisions that they made, and come to a middle ground and settle into, can they truly have an understanding, a perspective of why that person chose to make that choice. Doesn't mean you have to agree, but rather just honor them and understand what they're at. That's it.
Yes. And the other thing is that I've been studying A Course in Miracles for a while, and we need to look and find the divinity within every person, the light, who they truly are, instead of looking at their outer actions, and because that's not who they really are. Their body is not who they really are.
That's right.
It's sometimes sort of hard to see through all the layers.
Yes.
Of self-deception or whatever it is that they have, or their actions, because some people are like, what? But when I read in conversation, I think it was in the first Conversations with God, when Neil Donald Walsh said to God, so is Hitler going to go to heaven? And it was like, God's answer back was he was sort of laughing, and yes, because he fulfilled his purpose on the earth, but his essence isn't all of that
Yeah.
stuff that we see as evil, and
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
not.
Everybody has a purpose, and everybody's living in their full conviction, their purpose, their opinions, their judgments, their decisions that they make in life. And I've often recognized and witnessed others who have such a strong conviction about a topic, a scenario, a subject matter, a category, whatever it is. The stronger the conviction, the easier for me to identify that person is operating from a different aspect of themselves. They're not truly operating from their true source life. So then I can offer that element of compassion and understanding and allow them and witness that journey for them.
And it doesn't help to try to change their minds.
We're not, I guess I'm a believer of we're not in a position to do that. We can offer the invitation of a different perspective, but whether they take it or not, that's not my job to convince anybody of anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. My dad used to say that once somebody's made up their mind, don't try to change it, because, that's going to only create conflict.
Right.
Just stand with them. Just be with them if they want you there. But don't try to change their mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree completely. Creates the friction. And that then in itself creates a whole domino effect of a relationship that could potentially be a beautiful alignment and a supportive, nurturing relationship rather than a conflict and distraction, I guess. Destruction, should I say.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. Lucinda, thank you so much for all your conversations and your storytelling and all the pieces and nuggets of wisdom that we've delved into, and the current world in terms of what we're going into and what we are faced with. So thank you for sharing your perspective and bringing that up to light, so others who are listening might take an extra minute or two to marvel over that scenario about themselves.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me as your guest. I have enjoyed our conversation.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.